Just had an idea. Instead of that really aggressive and intro music, maybe we should do like the Titanic intro, the theme song, you know, the Celine Dion song.
Yeah, I think that might work a little bit better.
You know, I don't know. We were going to say, we said off air, Charles, what do you think of that aggressive intro?
So let's get the live feedback from Charles Watts on that ridiculous intro now.
It's got me pumped, I tell you. It's like I'm sitting here in front of Netflix already waiting for the big new release that's coming.
Beautiful. Well, Andy, I don't know why you called this meeting. There's nothing to talk about Arsenal-wise right now. No games, nothing going on in the transfer market. So, let's wrap this up and get people on their way. There's actually a ton of stuff to talk about. And, this time of year, during the transfer window, a wise animal I once knew who recently passed away said it's important to sort through all the noise and get just to the news. And who better to do that than our guest today, who is breaking his Gooners podcast duck, the Arsenal correspondent for Goal.com. It's Charles Watts. Thank you for breaking your duck with us. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me. Finally, I appreciate it. Sorry for missing out a couple of times recently, but here today. I love that bell, by the way.
Oh, that's the bell for any time I say something that is not American is traditionally British. I have a fascination for comments like breaking ducks and sixes and sevens, and so you may hear it a couple times during the pod, but that doesn't mean I'm a bell end. It just means I have a bell.
Indeed.
I was telling somebody today, just about 20 minutes ago, that in the entire podcast universe, I think our podcast holds the record, Andy, for the biggest discrepancy between podcast guests and podcast hosts. Would you say that's true? I mean, the guest game is good, but then there's us. So anyway, Goal.com, Charles, is part of DAZN. Is that true?
It is. Yeah.
Andy loves himself some DAZN.
Man, the Balking lineup was great.
I know, and then COVID happened, and it's
I know.
But exciting company to work for. But I mean, the offices are really cool, but they're unfortunately they're other end of the country for me. So this is basically my office around me here. So I don't get to take advantage too much of the pretty cool stuff.
You don't get to go to DAZN very often. The actual zone,
not at all.
Well, the Arsenal community has gotten to know you through social media, through print media, through online media, your hard work, and you've become a household name for Gooners everywhere, as being a very reliable source, as our chat is already pointing out on all things Arsenal. And that isn't an opinion that necessarily applies to all journalists or people covering Arsenal or football clubs in general. It seems like there are just certain media outlets that really get it. And Goal is one, Football.London, where you spent some time, is another, that really just seem to generate really good, well-informed and newsworthy journalists. And I know you overlapped some time with our friend James Benge at Football.London. He's another one I put in that category. So it's great to hear from you at times like this, and we'll get to a lot more of that news and what you have to say shortly. But what does it make you feel when you put work and years into your studies and growing your career and making contacts, and then out of nowhere you've got like bells and moles and other animal-based ITK accounts and gerbils and stuff just coming out of the woodworks and thousands of people hang on their every word? I mean, does that annoy you, or does it just roll off your back?
I wouldn't say it annoys me. It's a weird one, that, because we get a lot of grief, loads of grief from social media journalists for people saying, well, you're getting it wrong, you're not on it, you're not you're late to the party, all that sort of stuff. But those sort of accounts, for me, they're the ones that sort of stir the nest more during these transfer windows, because a lot of them are just creating out of rubbish, and like you said, people hang on to every word, and it sort of falls back on us who get the grief out of it. So it's a weird one, but I like social media. I enjoy it, and I don't hide away from it or anything like that. I enjoy the banter, the interaction with people, but it can get a bit brutal, especially at transfer window times. And I don't think those accounts help too much, because they have people's emotions riding on it, and they think, oh, we're going to get this guy, and when it doesn't happen, it tends to be us that gets a grief for it rather than them. because they can hide away behind gerbil pictures and horse pictures and things like that.
I don't know anyone that would ever think to do something like that. But my view for a long time has been that all these self-named ITKs, as they would like to call themselves. I mean, it's almost worse that the people that follow them, and this has long been my sense, the people that follow them and hang on their every word are just looking for positive information, whether it's true or not. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that helps. I don't think it really helps anybody in any way. And so it's just a mockery. And as a serious journalist, I just always wondered what you and your colleagues thought of that, because it's called silly season for a reason. But I'm 25 years into a pretty successful financial services career, and if I started having clients tell me that they were switching their business to the insurance gerbil, all of a sudden I'd probably be pretty annoyed. So, quick question also. I know you went along to cover Arsenal's summer tours in Australia and Singapore when you were with Football.London. Why didn't we see you in the U.S. last summer? I mean, did Goal.com not send anyone for the tour? Or, they were giving media passes away. We know that. Yeah, no, I actually couldn't make it last summer because of family commitments. I don't know if I would have gone anyway, because Goal tend to, we've got people based over in America, like we have people from our American offices over at some of the games covering it. So I'm not sure if they'd have sent me for it. Unlike Football London, like you said, I went to Singapore, I went to Australia, but I'm not sure. But it was I never had the battle of trying to get the money out of them because it was one I just couldn't do. It's tough. I've got two little kids here, so I know how important. I know how much of a family man you are, just from our conversations, and that's great. It's good to have family come first. And I will say that those tours, as you can surely support from your trips to Australia and Singapore, are just amazing. I mean, they tell you so much about the fan base and the supporters, more than they really do about the players as they do their preseason preparation. But they're great for us as well. They're the places where we get the most access to players as well, which it seems bizarre. You have to travel halfway around the world to get the best access to your Arsenal players, but we're there every single week with them in London. But we get great access over on those tours. They're completely unparalleled to what we get over here once the Premier League gets underway. So it is a real shame to miss it. And I really wanted to go as well because, I want to come over to America to cover it. I've always wanted to go to the US for one of the tours, and Arsenal had never seemed to have gone over there really, aside from the New York Red Bulls game a while back. So I was disappointed. Hopefully next time we head over your way, I'll manage to get on the plane. That would be great. We'll see you then. Andy had some access to the players. He got to ask Mustafi whether he was getting sleep or not with his new kid. It was fascinating. And of course the pineapple on pizza question. Oh yeah, but Charles, I would say that the access to players was not as fruitful on this trip compared to others from what we'd heard from some of the other journalists that we were sitting with. It was almost as if Arsenal were trying to usher them away from we had more access to the Bayern Munich players. Yeah, Thomas Muller will spend as much time with you as you want, but the Arsenal players suddenly, amazingly, when they were on their way from the dressing room to the bus or to their cars, all of them were on phone calls. Mm-hmm. They do that. All of them. I mean, I've never seen somebody have such perfectly timed phone calls. At the Emirates, they've got back doors to the changing room, so they don't even have to walk past us. I mean, that's a smart idea. I mean, just don't go at all. Don't stand there and act like you're on the phone, just so that you won't have to answer our questions about pineapple pizza and stuff. I mean, that's what everyone wants to know. With the Community Shield having just been finished, we'll probably spend more of Sunday's podcast talking about the Community Shield. We're here to talk to you about a lot of the interesting topics that our chat has. Do I have it correct that your presence in the stadiums, though, for games like that, be it Wembley or Emirates or visiting stadiums, is still there? I mean, you're not watching the games remotely on television. You're at the stadium, but probably in a different setup than you normally would be. Is that right? Yeah, we're still there. I didn't actually go to Community Shield just because we now with the new rules in place, organisations only get one press pass. And because I'd done the cup semi-final and the final at Wembley earlier in the month, I said our Liverpool guy could do it because he hadn't been there for a behind closed doors game at Wembley. So I covered that from home. But yeah, normally we've been there since the restart. It is different. Obviously, it's a case of we now park at the Emirates, which obviously never do. You normally get the underground in and walk over to the ground and
sit in the plush press room, get treated to a lovely slap-up meal, desserts, drinks, and then head out for the game, come back in, lunch at half-time, get some more food. And now it's a case of we literally drive into the stadium, park under the ground, walk into the pitch side, walk around the pitch into the press box, and then you don't leave there until the end. You do a press conference like I'm doing to you now, just on your laptop. Mikel sits in the press conference room, but we don't go down there. We sit in our seats and that's it. So basically there for about 3 hours in your seat the whole time. I only leave it to go to the toilet and then back to your car and out again. So it's a whole new world, honestly. It's totally changed. Still not used to it at all. And I hope we're not going to be at this stage for too much longer because, I'm still one of the fortunate people that gets to go to the games. So I'm not, I'll never, I know I'm in a very privileged position to be able to do that, especially at this sort of time. And my dad's been, he's season ticket holder. He's been going with me since 1990. We've been season ticket holders, and this is his first time in like 30 years that he's not going to games. And I know how disappointed he is every single week. And I look over at where his seat is, and still not seeing him there is weird, and waving to him before the game and stuff. So I know I'm in a privileged position, so I'm not going to complain a bit. But I would love to see fans back into the stadium soon. And touch wood, we saw the announcement today from Arsenal. We're getting there slowly. It's still going to be very reduced numbers, but just seeing some fans in the ground it's going to be nice, and it's going to have that sense of normality a little bit, that we're getting there slowly towards the normal times.
Well, and how can there be food there? Because unfortunately, all the chefs and serving attendants were made redundant. So,
very true.
I'd like to say hello to the chat. We've got Chris P, Bearded Gooner, Tanner, and Stan the Man from Same Old Arsenal USA, who had their debut USA podcast last night. It was really good stuff. We've got Eoin, Andy, or how do you pronounce it?
Eion.
EIO, yeah, he spells it out. And a number of other people joining us in the chat. It's good to see you. So, Andy, if you're by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, please, and let YouTube know that we're actually potentially worth listening to. Yeah. Andy, if your name is Schrodron, Socrates, Rob, Callum, Rufus, Konstantinos, or even Zek, you can't be feeling too good about your opportunities going forward now to get too much playing time for Arsenal in the next few years, because we've got 42 center backs now on the Arsenal roster now that we have Gabriel Magalhães. 2 questions. How do you feel about his last name starting with Maga? Does it make Arsenal great again, I hope? And number 2, are we going to be offering buy one, get 2 free on center halves like we're some like the fucking Men's Warehouse or something like that? I mean, what? And I'll come to you, Charles, because you've actually published an article about it. But Andy, what are your thoughts on how the defensive logjam that we suddenly have will bear out?
Yeah, no. So I'm okay with it because we need it. But yeah, there needs to be a clearing out. I'd prefer to see Mustafi and Socrates go before Holding and Chambers. And I've been burned by a Brazilian Gabriel before, so I'm going to just hold. I'm going to pump the brakes on this one.
You've been burned. Did you get heavily invested? Did you buy a lot of stock in Gabriel?
I did. They just can't be trusted. I think that's a typical saying down in Brazil. Do not trust Brazilian Gabriel. No, it's going to be interesting. It looks like rumors are holding off to Newcastle maybe for a season-long loan, bring him back next season when Luiz leaves. It's not a bad problem to have, but we need to clear some of this wage bill.
Yeah, and so speaking of which, let's ask somebody who knows. I mean, I would strongly suggest an article about this, but of course you did yesterday. So for anyone who's not who's been in a cave and hasn't had a chance to read it yet, what are your views on how Arsenal will kind of clear out that massive surplus now? Are we going to be seeing loans, sales, a combination of the two? Are we going to have to just murder a few of them to make room? I mean, what's on the docket, Charles?
I think it's going to be a combination of the two. Like you said, I think Rob Holding, that's going to happen. There will be a loan for Holding, looking like it's probably going to be Newcastle. I imagine that will happen pretty soon. In terms of the other two, Socrates and Mustafi, both got years left on their contract. It's just not going to be that easy. Arsenal want to get them out, and will try to get them out, but it's not going to be that easy just because of the situation that we're in. And I can understand it from the players' point of view. it's not the ideal time to be moving at the moment. They've both got very lucrative years left on their contracts at Arsenal. They're not going to get those wages anywhere else. You're in the middle of a pandemic. Why would you move right now? I know. People say, "Oh, we go and play regular football," but you've got to be thinking, if I just hold out for a year, at least get the money that's guaranteed to me now for a year, and then next summer the financial outlook will hopefully be a little bit better, and people will be able to offer more wages for me, and there'll be more clubs after me. So I can understand their position, but Arsenal are going to do all they can to get them out because, like you said, eight is too many. 9 when you include Mavropanos once he comes back next season. At the end of the next season, so Arsenal have got to
10 with Daniel Bellerin. I mean, you've got so many of them. So there's a 7-year-old that is included in there that needs to be cleared out as well.
It's going to be really, really difficult, and this is the problem that Arsenal are facing. It's not just this summer they faced it. I mean, trying to get some of these players out for countless transfer windows now. Mustafi somehow hung on, and fair play to him because of what he did last year and coming back and getting himself back into the team and becoming a real integral part of the team. He deserves a lot of credit for that, and he was really, really impressive under Arteta. But you still know there is that big clanger in there, and it'd be better for all parties really if he was to move on this summer. But I'm just not sure they're going to be able to do it. I think it's going to be a real struggle. Socrates maybe, although I think the fact that he's just had a kid is probably not going to help. Similar situation to Kolasinac.
Bringing a baby up in Naples isn't the easiest thing to do.
No, I do notice. Did you notice that? It did make me laugh that his baby was born 9 months to the day after Unai Emery was sacked.
That is.
I'm shocked. I'd be shocked if it's the only one.
3 of them have just had kids 9 months after Emery was sacked. It's Kolasinac, Socrates, and someone else. 3 of the squad have just had kids after Emery. It's clearly party time 9 months ago.
Yeah. Well, it's I mean, we're hearing these rumors out of Napoli, and it's only a £4.5 million deal. Yeah. But I would snatch the hand off for that because it's money we need, and it's wage. I mean, he's probably on around £100,000 a week.
Yeah. It's not so much. I don't know, like you said, it's not so much a transfer fee. It's more than wages.
Yeah.
Need to save it. The Mkhitaryan deal. People have complained about that on my social media, like replying to me. I think for Arsenal, it's a no-brainer. They weren't going to get any big transfer fee for him, but they've saved 10 million by getting him off the wage bill, and that's massive.
What was going to happen was that Alexis Sanchez was going to leave for free, and he was going to have 6 more months with us, stropping around, becoming a headache in the dressing room. So instead of that, we got some Mkhitaryan. We got a loan value out of Mkhitaryan, and now we've gotten out from under, what would have been Alexis's next contract. It's, it didn't go as great as it could have, but it certainly didn't go as poorly as it should have.
No,
absolutely.
Fair play to Mkhitaryan for actually going as well. I mean, we've seen what Ozil's, what's going on with Ozil. Mkhitaryan could have sat there and earned his money and not wanted to go play football, but he wanted to play, and fair play to him. I thought he was quite unlucky actually, Mkhitaryan. I know he got a lot of grief back at Arsenal from a lot of fans, but I actually thought it was all right. And I'm not surprised to see him doing well over in Italy, because I think he's a decent player. But in terms of Socrates, I think from what I've understood from people that I've spoken to, he's in no rush to move. I know all these stories are coming out that he's very, very close to Napoli, but that's kind of not what I'm hearing, and so I'll be interested to see how that pans out over the next couple of weeks. And the fact he's had the kid as well now kind of reaffirms what I've been hearing, really, that it's going to take a lot to get him out of London at this point. So I'm not so sure if a lot of those reports that we're hearing from Italy are quite as legit as they seem to be.
What are you hearing? So holding to Newcastle, for me, makes a lot of sense because he's a player that I think has had very good games for Arsenal, but he hasn't had enough. And it'd be nice to see him go to a club in the Premier League or Championship where he can play in week out and kind of prove whether or not he is good enough to continue his Arsenal career. And knowing that David Luiz maybe only has a year left before he joins coaching ranks, likely at Chelsea. What are your thoughts and what are you hearing a little bit closer to the holding situation of the year-long loan?
I think what you said is absolutely spot on. I'm fully in agreement that Holding shouldn't be one of the players who's sold this summer. I think a loan suits Holding perfectly. It suits Arsenal perfectly. I haven't forgotten how good Holding was before the injury, how good he was when he first came into the side under Wenger. He's a really good defender there, and crucially, it's taken an awful long time to recover from. It's a serious injury. It's often like a year later when players get back to that sort of form. So I think for Holding to go out there and get regular football for a year, and like I said, come back once Louise has gone, and it just ticks all the boxes. And look, even if Arteta doesn't fancy him after a year, you kind of feel like his value will be more next summer than it is this summer because he's barely played. But if he goes and has a full season, does very, very well at Newcastle or whoever it is, you think his value is going to be worth more if Arsenal are going to sell him next summer anyway. So, I think
failing injury, I would hope that would be the case.
So there's plenty of players I would think Arsenal should just try and cut their ties with, try and sell straight away. But not for me, Holding's not one of them. I think he's one that alone suits all parties best.
Quick yes or no answer. Any truth to the massive online rumor that Gabriel has dodgy knees?
Rubbish.
Exactly.
No, he does not have dodgy knees.
Okay. Thank goodness for that. So, Andy, what's Arsenal's favorite kind of wax? Do you know?
I don't.
It's Brazilian.
Oh, God.
And we've got Brazilians coming out of our tuckuses. I mean, we got Luiz, Gabriel, Martinelli, Willian, Edu. We're apparently getting Andre Santos back. We know in 1998 Arsenal won the World Cup. We've seen the headlines. Do we think that Brazil has a chance to win the Premier League in the next few years?
No, but Arsenal have a chance to win the CONCACAF. So
the CONCACAF, that's what it's called.
Whatever the fuck the tournament is, it's like every summer.
Yeah, it's like twice a year.
It's like all of these, like all the South American countries, and then it's like Wales or Azerbaijan.
Yeah, there's two wild card entries. It's usually like Japan and Azerbaijan or something like that. It's strange. In backroom news, taking a step away from transfers for a minute, just perhaps the most Arsenal man alive, just ahead of you, Andy. Ken Friar, OBE, has stepped down from the Arsenal board at the ripe old age, young age of 86. Now, I have to admit, while I've been supporting Arsenal for over 30 years, I only recently really dug in and learned about the impact that he had on the club. 74 years of being involved since he became a part-time employee at the age of 12, right after the World War II era. So if you visit Emirates Stadium, especially if you've come via the tube, you certainly walked across the Ken Friar Bridge. You've seen the Ken Friar statue. He's a former company secretary, managing director, someone who always emphasized and nurtured the club with its community ties, its supporters ties, and like the type of person who really embodies what is meant by the Arsenal way. So much so that in 2004, the borough of Islington actually gave him something called the Freedom of the Borough, which is amazing because it gives him the freedom to actually go anywhere. He can go into people's houses at night. He can make pubs stay open all night. I mean, I visited England a couple times in the last few years, and I'm growing the number of places that I'm not able to go to. So he had the freedom. I have the restriction of the borough. But Charles, I mean, there's nothing unusual about an 86-year-old stepping down from a long-held position on his terms. But it does beg the question, I mean, is this potentially making way for someone new to enter the board, someone with Arsenal DNA like a David O'Leary or even Alex Scott?
Dennis Bergkamp.
Not for the board.
Possibly. I think Vinay, because Vinay's technically still not on the board yet either. So I do wonder if Vinay might get a seat on it fairly soon. But I think it needs fresh blood. The age of it has certainly come down recently with Sir Chips going and now Ken going. Obviously Tim Lewis came in as well, so he's a new member. Is pretty young, so the age of it is the lowest it has been for God knows how long now. So there is change happening in the boardroom, but I think the whole thing with the Arsenal board, though, there still isn't too much power in it. The power all rests in over where you guys are over the Atlantic, and it still feels a bit like a sort of honorary position, a seat on the Arsenal board. You don't feel like it's going to make too much of a difference. Whatever they say, it's going to be a case of Arteta to Edu to Vinay to Josh, and decision made sort of. And the boardroom doesn't really have too much of a say in it. So I'm not surprised Ken stepped down. I mean, this was nothing to do with feeling disillusioned with the board or anything like that. It's just like you said, it's an 86-year-old man, and I see him every other game at the Emirates when he comes past us. coming down from the director's box. And he's a very frail old guy now, Ken Friar. So he certainly deserves to put his feet up a little bit now and just enjoy games as a fan. I mean, 70 years of service at Arsenal. What an absolute sterling job he's done. He's pretty much done everything you can do at the club. And the story about how he first arrived as well was fantastic. He was just playing outside Highbury and he's kicking a ball around with his mates in 1945 and got his ball stuck under the car, a random car, and he was trying to drag it out of there and getting underneath it. And turned out it was George Allison, the Arsenal manager's car. He was there, and that's how he got invited in, and that's started this 70-year love affair with Arsenal. It's a fantastic story, and he's done so much. He's got his bridge at the Emirates now. He's got the Ken Friar Bridge with the statue on it. He's got one of the roads underneath where I park actually at the Emirates Stadium. It's called Ken Friar Way now. So, you know, he's left his mark on that club, and he deserves to be able to put his feet up now and just enjoy like the rest of the Arsenal fans.
Absolutely. And, you know, I with all of the changes going on at the club lately, I wanted to make sure that we didn't gloss over one of the more important ones, not necessarily from an impact standpoint, but from a legacy standpoint, that because it's important to celebrate our past and the people who have kind of made Arsenal in many ways the club that it is today. So
it will be interesting. You were talking about the board there. It will be interesting if they do look to bring in some sort of Arsenal DNA into it, because obviously Raul was a guy who was a little bit hesitant to do that. Where David O'Leary was pretty close to happening not too long ago.
And Friar wanted that to happen.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Is it his legacy that
Sir Chips as well? It was the old guard were quite keen on that happening, and Raul wasn't. So it'll be quite interesting to see if Eni is more open to that and open to bringing someone in and trying to make the board a little bit more relevant and have more of a say on football matters. And I think if it did, it would certainly get the support of everyone over here, and it'd get the support of the fan base, and you know, whether it O'Leary or someone else. You know, so I saw Amy Lawrence, the fantastic Arsenal reporter over the Athletic.
Absolutely.
She suggested Ian Wright the other day, and I mean, that would certainly shake up the boardroom, right? You going in there, but
those meetings would take on a new dimension.
I feel like
absolutely would.
I feel like he's a little too honest with his opinion on how things are happening at the club.
It certainly stir things up.
He certainly would. He certainly would.
I hear that Lee Gunner is also under consideration, but
So
a little more shout out to the chat. We've got some new people in here. Nikki is in here. Who is currently a David, not a David, which is a positive thing. We've got Dan T joining us. Says we'll get the Aldi CEO. I don't really know why that would be the case. Chris P still here. Emery Stern, Texas Gooner. Renat Sahab, thanks for joining us again. If you're new to the podcast, you found out about it from some other way, please stay tuned. We're going to be talking about Gooners versus Cancer in a little bit as well, because that's an important thing going on right now.
I think Owen, quickly to this point, Mike, beating opposition to Gabriel's signature highlights the pull Arteta is gaining along with the return of Ceballos. He could have possibly pushed to start for Real Madrid this season. Shows the project that Arteta and Edu are working on. And, Owen's right. Like, Gabriel had a line of clubs that are in better positions within Europe and probably better financial packages that he could have went to. And it's nice to see that the pull of Arsenal is still there. And a lot of that has to be credit to Arteta and Edu. Charles, are you hearing behind the scenes kind of what they're saying to these players, or is it, just hush-hush and they're just using that kind of foundation of what they can bring to the club, long-term future plans that are exciting these players to join us and return to us?
I'm not sure exactly what they're saying to him, but having spoken to Arteta a lot of times since he's come in, I can fully understand that if anyone gets on the phone to him and he tells them and spells out his vision for the club, that they'll want to buy into it, because he's such an inspirational guy to listen to. He really is. And, he's making a huge impact behind the scenes. And has done since pretty much the first day that he walked in to Arsenal. So I'm not surprised at all. And I thought it was interesting, Gabriel, in his interview on the website, he said that when Arteta rang him, that absolutely made up his decision for him, because it just felt so wanted. And he, like I said, bought into what Arteta had to say. And I mean, Arsenal very, very lucky to have Mikel Arteta. I just got back to that decision to hiring Unai Emery and sort of chickening out really from going Arteta, who was so close to getting it originally, and you kind of think, guys, just 18 wasted months without it.
Do you think, though, it might have been the wrong time for it? I mean, because normally when you replace a legend like that, the person who replaces him has no chance. David Moyes, no chance to succeed.
I get what you're saying.
It might have been the wrong time, and now this is most definitely the right time.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and it's kind of nice to have that barrier because the person who immediately follows on the legend always fails. I get that, Moyes, Emery, but I still think Arteta's got the kind of mindset about him, and that he could have handled it. He really could have done. And I remember when the day was appointed, we're up in the boardroom after the original press conference. A few of us went up to the boardroom and at the Emirates and sat around the round table with Arteta and Raul, and got to ask some more questions. And I said to Raul, I asked him, I was like, do you regret now 80 months on that decision? And he said no, but I always think to myself, I bet you're lying. I just think he must have done, and just thought if only if I'd have made that decision now, because I just think Arsenal, like I said, I think it was 18 wasted months, and they'd be so much better set now if Arteta had got that job a while ago. But look, it's all in the past now anyway. They haven't done it, but he's just transformed that club. The day before Emery got sacked, obviously they lost. It was Frankfurt, wasn't it, on the Thursday night in Europa League, and he got sacked on a Friday. On that Wednesday, we were at the training ground as we were allowed before European games, and we were allowed to watch 15 minutes of training. It was Emery's last training session. And it was so apparent how broken things were at Arsenal. We were all can you hear me? Sorry, disappeared there. And Emery was on his own. He was putting out cones and things that coaches would usually done, and you could just see it was totally broken. It was just a really horrible atmosphere. And to go from where they were that day to where they are now, to winning the FA Cup, it is honestly, it's remarkable what he's done in such a short space of time. And Arsenal are really, really lucky to have him in charge. And I can really, if he gets a backing that he should, and it looks like he's getting the players in that he wants at the moment, then I think Arsenal are really well set to, I'm not saying they're going to win the league anytime soon, but they're well set to really give it a good go to get back to at least where they were during the final years of Wenger and make themselves a top 4 club again.
So I want to kind of segue to that backing part, Mike. You don't send me the outlines anymore, so I don't know kind of what the flow of this podcast is.
You're better on the fly. I want the true spur of the moment, Andy.
Okay, so I'm gonna on the fly then go to Partey, and then the guy from France that everyone gets mad when his name is pronounced wrong. I don't know how the fuck to pronounce it, but the people that released to gerbil the Raul sacking and some other information that comes out of Arsenal that is pretty accurate 100% of the time is that this week is a big week for Arsenal because those two players are very high on the list. And now we're starting to hear that Bellerin might be off to PSG, which we can get to in a minute. But what are you hearing from a transfer of Partey and then whatever the fuck that other guy's name is?
Honestly, I've had so much grief on YouTube for my pronunciation.
Yeah. The football hipsters get really upset, Charles.
Husim Arwa. That's what I've decided on. Yeah, it's Arwa. I'm sure I'm right. I even watched a video of him pronouncing it.
It's Donny Ceballos, right? Am I getting that
right? Yeah. Donny.
That's the part you're making fun of.
I'll start with Partey. I mean, I did a story yesterday. Actually, I put a piece up on Partey, the sort of state of play, how I see it, and what I've heard with Partey. And he's very much still Arsenal's priority. He has been since the start of this window, and he still is very much Arsenal's priority. And Arteta wants him. The club have identified him a long time ago, even before Arteta came in. He's been right at the top of the recruitment team's names, a list of midfielders who should come in, as Gabriel was, by the way. He was first choice of the recruitment team, who have now been sacked of which defender they should get in this summer.
Thank you for your interest in our affairs, team.
Yeah, and Arteta and Partey is, but it is, as everyone's saying, Arsenal. Atletico aren't going to bargain with Arsenal. They want to keep Partey. They want to give him a new contract. From what I've been told, the sort of big contract that they're offering him, they aren't actually in a position to give him right now because of COVID, but they've given him assurances that in a year's time they will be in a position to honour what they've promised him. He's quite happy to wait and see. He wants Arsenal, from what I've been told, but he's very happy at Atletico and he's not going to force his way out or anything like that. So he's going to wait and see how the next few weeks progress. But Atletico don't want to lose him, so they're saying to Arsenal, look, you've got to pay his release clause. You know what it is. You do that, and it's down to the player then. And Arsenal aren't in.
It it sounds like one of those situations where he's going to end up with a better contract from Atletico and stay, which doesn't mean
if Arsenal don't trigger the release clause, because I don't think Atletico aren't going to bargain, and Arsenal are trying to give him Guendouzi. They're trying to give Guendouzi to every single club in Europe, and they haven't got any takers at the moment. And Atletico aren't keen on it. They are keen on Lacazette, but they don't want to lose Partey, so they're saying that it's not going to. We might be in a position if we can sell Costa or Morata even to buy Lacazette, but we're not going to give you Partey for him. So Arsenal have got to find money to pay that release clause, £44.5 million, €50 million, and the next few weeks are going to be key to that because, like I said, he is the priority. They want him. Arteta wants him. They think he can make a real difference, and I do as well. I think it'd be a fantastic signing, but they've got to move players on, and it's going to be tough. Like we said, it's tough to move the players on. They want to move on, so they might have to make some really difficult decisions in terms of players they perhaps would rather keep, but some clubs might be willing to give them a fair bit of money for. You mentioned Bellerin, Lacazette as well. We've seen the Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Emi Martinez stuff as well, but I think Bellerin's going to be the interesting one to see how that progresses over the next couple of weeks because there's interest in him in big clubs. You could get a decent fee for Bellerin. You've got your replacement there already if Maitland-Niles is happy to play there. You've got Cedric there as well. So I think the Bellerin one's going to be an interesting one over the next couple of weeks.
That almost seems like realistic. I mean, how much would he? I mean, if he has to leave Arsenal, which I know he doesn't want to do, you could do worse than going to Paris when you're Hector Bellerin.
Yeah, indeed.
It's not a bad place for him to live.
It's kind of a bittersweet moment for him leaving too, though, because he has been with Arsenal for so long, but it's ultimately his move that kind of starts the dominoes falling for Arsenal to create depth in positions that we desperately need it. And so that would be like his final farewell to the club that he obviously loves. But I think Paris is such, like you just said, Mike, such a great move for him because it's the lifestyle that he lives every day in London, and I think everywhere you go in France or Paris specifically is a catwalk, and so he'll love it.
Yeah.
He'll love it. He'll
just be walking on cats the whole time.
But we haven't talked about Areola yet, the guy from Lyon.
In terms of him, from what I understand on him, I think it's going to be really hard for us. There is interest in him, absolutely 100%, but there is from a lot of other clubs as well. But he's going to be more expensive than Partey, and I think I've always said it. I just think that's going to be a really hard one for Arsenal because if they're struggling to pay for Partey, they're going to, how do you get Arwar as well? So. But you also look at it and think, for me, I mean, both of them would be the absolute dream because we've seen how good Arsenal are when they set up in this 3-4-3 formation that they're playing under Arteta. They're fantastic when they're playing against the likes of Chelsea, City, Liverpool, where they can play on the counter-attack and do what they did at the weekend with Aubameyang's goal. But we saw at the end of last season again when they played Aston Villa, when they're the team that have got all the possession and they haven't got space to play on the counter-attack, they struggle. They struggle to break teams down. Ozil's nowhere to be seen. And there's no one really in that team that can come in and provide that creative spark in the central areas when teams are sitting deep against them, and Arwar can do that. And so, for me, both of them would be the absolute dream, but I'm just not sure how on earth Arsenal would manage to pull that off. And I think it'd either be one or the other. And for me, right now, I think it's more likely to be Partey than Arwar.
And why are no other teams seemingly in for Partey? I mean, it's like Arsenal or Madrid, and that's it. Whereas with Aouar, it appears, you hear Juventus, you hear, multiple other clubs that, or he's one of those players that anyone would like to be able to have if they could afford him. Why don't we hear about other clubs for Partey? I mean, we even heard about other clubs for Gabriel. What's going on there? What that just seems odd.
I think he's very happy at Atletico Madrid, or he wants Arsenal. That's what it's just. I think from what I've understood, the only club he's going to leave Atletico for is going to be Arsenal, and a lot of people know that. That's kind of the message that's been given out. So I think lots of clubs would be interested in signing Thomas Partey, but I think the idea is, or the word that's been put out certainly by his people, is that he's either staying at Atletico or he's happy, or he's going to move to Arsenal.
So we look at the Mike. Let's get to that just after this. I have a question about all this. So. Yep. Partey, it looks like they want the release clause match before we can even get a conversation going.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact it's
Areola,
been reported that we have agreed personal terms with him.
which
I don't get how you agree personal terms.
Would Leon kind of work with a kind of Pepe sort of deal where we're throwing a little bit up front and then more on the back end? So I'm just wondering if there's a chance in how we can try and get both of these players if we do move on Bellerin, Torreira, Kolasinac, and it looks like Socrates seem to be the big four on their way out.
Well, yeah, and Guendouzi. I mean, Arsenal, like I said, offered Guendouzi to everyone, and so there is that. But and I haven't had this confirmed by anyone that I've spoken to, but there obviously are reports that Leon have said no to Guendouzi. Oh, well, you're bang on, because the thing with the release clause for Partey as well, and I'm not entirely 100% sure on how it works, but from what I've been told is that you pretty much have to walk in with a suitcase full of cash and pay it in full to trigger the release clause. And players in Spain usually actually pay it themselves. The clubs actually pay the players. The buying club pays the players the money, and then the player deposits it with La Liga, and that activates the release clause. So it's a weird way of doing it, and it has to go in full. But like you said, with Arwar, it could be more of a Pepe deal where it's 10 million up front and then 7 million over the rest of his contract to pay the money off or whatever. But so there, there is a chance, but I still think it's unlikely. It feels to me more like one or the other. But if it does pan out and it is both, then like I said, I think that is a dream, because it would transform Arsenal. And the midfield is the absolute key for Arsenal. Everyone's always said the defence is Arsenal's biggest problem, but I've never agreed with that. I've always thought the midfield is the biggest problem. When we were conceding 31 shots against Watford at the start of the season, it wasn't the defensive fault, it was the midfield's fault. They just literally allowed Watford to run through at will and get shots away from the edge of the box. And I think if you sort out Arsenal's midfield, as Arteta did towards the end of last season when Xhaka and Ceballos really found form together and formed that good partnership, Arsenal was so much better. The defence was protected a lot more, and they just looked a better team. So if Arsenal would sort the midfield out, I think it will make the world of difference to this team. But it feels to me like there's still two players short in there. They need a real dominant figure. And Partey's not just a dominant figure. He's a big lad. He's aggressive, but he's always great on the ball. He drives forward as well. He does get his head up and split the lines and get the attackers going. But if you can get both of them, if you can get that real dominant figure who will disrupt teams and move the ball forward quickly, and then you have the creative spark in front of them, I just think it will transform this Arsenal team.
Be amazing. Quick thing, and Andy, I'm going to ask you to kind of ask this question and connect it to what Chris is talking about. Thank you for the super chat. One quick note: we love the support. We certainly will read your messages. If you're thinking about a super chat, which is basically a donation to the podcast, do us a favor going forward. And again, thank you, Chris. Just put a comment in saying we'll donate, and instead of putting it to super chat that YouTube takes about 40% of or something like that, donate it to goonersversuscancer.com. We'll answer your question anyway, but the money that you donate to the charity or to the podcast goes half to YouTube, and the other half is going to the charity anyway, not to us. So thank you very much, Chris. And let's get to the question. Forgetting kind of the internal transfers of players coming in for the moment, do you think Arsene and Wrighty's comments at the time David Dean left were prophetic? Record sale is still Overmars from 2001. Andy, what were the comments that, or Charles, of course, you likely know, what were the comments that Chris is talking about?
I don't remember the quotes. Charles, do you?
No, I don't. I'm not specific quotes, but I imagine it was just that Arsenal are going to massively miss him and going to struggle to replace him, which they certainly have.
Well, Chris, if you want to clarify in the chat, we'll
yeah, Chris, if you can clarify in the chat, definitely, and we'll pop it back up on the screen. I thought Fabregas leaving was our record transfer out to Barcelona.
I think it's still over. I think it is still Overmars. It was a weird deal because they basically chucked Partey in for free at that Overmars deal. So basically, I think it was like 40 million.
So that was a buy one get one free.
Yeah, it was.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I remember Adebayor being 35 million, which I thought was a steal. But I mean, I guess we'd always kind of been in that. We'd sold all of our best players for between 30 and 35 million over that Emirates stage.
Fox went for that, didn't he? And even Awaby went for around that. So yeah, it's all. They haven't exactly sold brilliantly, have they?
But, to the point of David Dein, and I think every Arsenal fan knows this, is our transfer dealings certainly went in the wrong direction when he was removed from his position. And I'm sure Arsene and Righty were just echoing that the power that this man had, this was before all the super agents. That's essentially what he was, right? He knew everyone in football. He had connections to everyone. And he was great at negotiating, and he was kind of a one-man shop, and everything he did for us was just absolutely like perfection. And I think for a long time, we were sold that Ivan was going to be that replacement, and he sure was a fucking douchebag who shit the bed quite often.
Could you have just put more profanity into one sentence than you just did? Actually, I've heard you do it.
So at the end of the day, I think that's kind of what he's alluding to. It appears now, and what I'm kind of enjoying with this transfer market is we're not Chelsea just throwing a ton of money at great players, but the players Arteta is looking at seem to fit what our need is, and even the players we're connected to are part of the puzzle that all the fans have been screaming for a long time. As Charles said, midfield has been just this, we love to say gaping holes on this pod, but it really has been. I mean, without a solid midfield, your defense is put into, trouble, and that's where we see a lot of mistakes.
And you can't create chances with
exactly
with a front three or two like we have. I mean,
and so a couple of years ago we were seeing us. Hindsight's 2020 because Aubameyang was a great purchase, but did we really need him at the time? No, we didn't. But now we're looking at it where we see a manager and the director of the club looking at these different players and identifying, Partey. God, I don't want to learn this guy's name. Areola.
Areola is actually a player for DC United right now. He's an American international, but
what a terrible name for that kid.
I know that's good. Yeah, can you imagine as a kid?
But no, it's exciting. It's exciting.
What a boob.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean the other people that I think have been mentioned, and if Charles, you want to just kind of thumbs up or thumbs down about whether there's any pulse to these remaining, is Thiago, Philippe Coutinho. Those are probably more about people making a lot of much ado about nothing, a phone conversation, or what would make sense, rather than actual things that were on the way to happening. Would that be fair to say?
I mean, I'd be stunned if Arsenal got Thiago. I mean, I'd love it, but I'd be absolutely stunned. There's other clubs that are going to get Thiago, and Coutinho is just Arsenal don't normally, like people behind the scenes, Arsenal don't normally comment on transfer stories, don't usually stay well out of it. But they were very forthright in coming out and saying that it's bollocks. There's no Coutinho isn't joining. The only thing
are you saying that they rubbished it?
They absolutely rubbished it. Yeah, 100%.
It was shite. Okay, I'll stop now.
But the only thing for me that we all know who Coutinho's agent is, and if Kia wasn't Coutinho's agent, it'd be like no chance that it's not happening. And it's not going to happen anyway. But just because Kia's there, you can't ever rule anything out when Kia's involved when it comes to Arsenal. So, but everything, all the noises coming out of Arsenal and Coutinho is like, no, that one is absolutely not happening. It's not, and I can't see it with Thiago as well. It's just, if he ends up in the Premier League, it's going to be at Liverpool.
Andy, are you doing that?
I'm getting nauseous. I don't like cutting our guests' face off, so I'm trying to get because we got a lot of questions that people are asking for Charles. I'm trying to figure out.
Honestly, StreamYard was supposed to fix that so that the question would be completely contained under the bottom.
Yeah.
But so how about we do this?
Okay, perfect.
That way we're cutting my face off, and I think that's just basically doing everyone a favor.
Yeah, there are some questions in the chat room. I'm going to throw up, but we're answering some of these as we go. So let's just give credit to whoever.
Oh, I thought you were saying that you were about to throw up. Like I'm like, just don't do that on the pod, or do that on the pod. It would be interesting.
Yeah, but we have some new listeners in here too. So let's get to it, Mike. Let's stop, take a little break, and get some questions.
Charles from Manu. Oh, that's an unfortunate first name.
As an Arsenal supporter, yes.
Yeah, as an Arsenal supporter, named Manu. His middle name is Chelsea, but Manu is asking for Charles. How much do you dig to get the info, to put it in as official on transfers, I would assume? And how do we as fans evaluate information we get in social media? Most of them are not true most of the time, as we've very well covered in the whole ITK discussion. But I mean, what, if you can say, like, what is your process before you go public with something that you know?
Well, you have to just get it, for me, you have to get it confirmed by more than one person for it. And you have to just stand out, because, you're not going to get every story, far from it. But when the story breaks somewhere else from someone who looks, is pretty well sourced and well trusted, you need to chase it up and back it up with at least a couple of people to stand up. I'm not just, if say that, David Osteen, fantastic reporter, brilliant Arsenal transfers, but just because he put something out, I'm not going to then write a story based on that. I need to get it backed up myself and firmed up myself. So sometimes, you'll see stories come out sort of a day later, and that's, maybe it's, people say you haven't got your fingers on your pulse, you're just following on, but you're waiting to get it confirmed yourself, because you can't just rely on someone else's information. You need to go through your own sources and ensure that it's right before you put it out there. So everything that goes out, I'm talking about myself here personally, everything that I put out it's been checked and double checked and sourced, and speaking to people and confirmed.
Well, that is the appropriate way to approach it, I would say.
You'd never put something out on a whim, which a lot of these, that you talk about the ITK accounts of people hang on every word and think it's true. A lot of that, it's just not. They're just totally putting something out there, and they've got an awful lot of followers, and suddenly it spreads like wildfire, and a lot of people take it to be gospel. But
if you confirm with one or two sources inside the club, is that equivalent to confirming with 8 rodents and inanimate objects on Twitter? I mean, is there like a ratio of how many? Like, once 8 people say it, it's the same as 2 insiders?
I have no idea. I'm not. I'm not sure how the rodent the rodent sourcing pool works, but
maybe someday we'll find out.
Let's go to. I'm awful with names, so I'm going to say Vivek. He's a first time listener. He said he's saw you on the AV podcast, Mike, and that's why he's here. Charles, if we get all the players we were discussing before, what are you hearing about players going down on loan with Nelson, Willock, and Smith Rowe? Any rumors around those young players?
I think with Nelson, there might be a chance at the end of the window. You think Arsenal got Pepe on the right, they've got Willian who's come in now. He's certainly, for Chelsea, his best performances are over on the right hand side. So I think Nelson is one to potentially look out for at the end of the window. Arsenal make a decision on him then. Emile Smith Rowe, at the moment, we've been told, is very much part of Arteta's plans. And he wants to have a good look at him this season. He obviously had a good spell over at Huddersfield, but Arteta wants to look at him now. Now we've got 4 or 5 weeks left of the transfer window. If Arteta watches him in training these next 4 weeks and decides it's best to send him out again, then he will. But as it stands right now, there are no plans to send Smith Rowe out, and Arsenal want to have a good look at him. But the thing with Smith Rowe, I kind of look at, certainly with this formation that we're playing at the moment, the 3-4-3 that Arteta seems to have settled on it and is working, so I'm not expecting him to change it right now. That is I'm not sure where Smith Rowe really fits into that, because he's kind of like that Ozil figure. He's very much a number 10 or he's a number 8 type player, and he can play out wide, but it's not his best position. So if Arsenal are playing a 4-2-3-1 or even a 4-3-3, it would suit him more than what we're playing at the moment. And so it will be interesting if that sort of changes Arteta's thinking a little bit and thinks, well, at least get him out until Christmas to give him a good few months of playing regularly, because he needs to, and he's a good player. I really like Smith Rowe, and I think he can make an impact. But I just do wonder if the formation that certainly we've settled on at the moment it's not really the best formation for him, which is a bit of a shame.
He might need to be one of those guys who gets another loan, maybe a little bit more high profile even than and becomes a sellable asset. I mean, as much as you don't want to see these guys go, some of them have to, especially if they play a position that isn't necessarily fitting into our system. And, those kind of sellable assets create the ability to plug in better players at the positions that we have, and how you become get to be in the Dortmund and Liverpool and even Chelsea to an extent school of player trading. I would hope that he gets a chance. I disagree
with that. I think that there's sellable asset, but then I also think that Willian was brought in for the sole purpose of being able to mentor these types of players. He's a great player, and he's going to do a lot for Arsenal, but the runway in Willian is not much. So if he can even just hand down some of the, the tenure that he has to these younger players, I mean, we're sitting on a great, great prospect of youth. And unless they want to play tomorrow, they're going to learn under Arteta. So Avon Teddington,
there is that capo type of situation, like where Arteta is setting up some very specific people in his club that are not just there to play, but are there to coach in a sense from the pitch, from the practice pitch. Willian, Luiz, there's I think an intentional strategy that's going on there to value these players for far more than they're capable of putting onto the pitch, and that's the type of thing you may not actually see the dividends from for a year or two or three, but I think it's brilliant if that's in fact what's going on.
Yeah, I think also if just on the Smith Rowe thing, I don't think 3-4-3 is Arteta's desired formation long term. I think it suits it at the moment because of the issues that we've talked about with Arsenal in midfield, especially, and it sort of shores up the defence a little bit. But I don't think Arsenal can continue to be this sort of counter-attacking type team. I think long term he'll want to get an extra man in midfield, go back to 4 at the back. You kind of look at Saliba and Gabriel left and right sided centre backs going forward as the long term thing. So I'm not sure it's going to be 3-4-3, and so I think once he goes back to a 4-3-3 type formation, which he will at some point, that Emile Smith Rowe will be much more suited to that position, which is why I kind of think loan perhaps, but I would absolutely not want to sell Emile yet. I think he's one to stick around.
Avon Teddington is just asking anything you've heard on the Auba announcement / agreement of a new contract.
It's kind of similar to the whole Gabriel thing, to be honest, which ran on and on and on. But as far as I'm aware, that Auba's pretty much it's all done, and we're just waiting for the announcement. And I thought the announcement was going to come a while ago, and it hasn't yet. But
he's made about 8 almost announcements on his own Instagram feed.
But I think, as far as I'm aware, I'm not getting worried by it. I think it's just a case of waiting for the announcement, and it's all done.
Chris P, once again, thank you, and appreciate you mentioning that you'll donate too. I mean, Gooners versus Cancer, I'm going to talk about in just a minute. For those of you who aren't familiar with it yet, says following up on his conversation. See, this is what we should do. We get a question, we act confused by the question, and then we force the person to do another donation in order to fully clarify the question. I mean, it's a great strategy. This guy must know Colorado Gooner, and for some of you in the chat, you'll know why I'm saying that. They said it was a sad day for the club when David Dean left, and one that we may not recover from. And that's the comment from Arsene and from who was it else that he
right.
said?
Ian Wright.
Yeah, that Ian Wright had said. And there's no question that you can trace the beginning of some of our later Arsene Wenger year struggles to the departure of David Dean. And I'm gonna go ahead and call him David Dean, because I think when you become a David when you're that special of a David. With Luiz, he keeps going back and forth, but David Dean was definitely a David. A couple more questions, and then we've got to get to some discussion about Gooners versus Cancer. And then Charles, do you have a few minutes more to hang with us? I know we're pushing up against the hour.
No, I'm good. Go for it.
Cool. Adam's asking, do you rate the Willian signing? Just wondered where you think he'd play, as I thought he'd sit in front of the front two. And then I'll just add to that, with a lot of rumors coming out that he might be playing centrally, and that's why he preferred to move to Arsenal over anywhere else and took less money. So what are you hearing there?
In terms of if I rate the Willian signing, I do, absolutely. I've always really thought he's a really good player. I still think he's a good player. I thought it was great for Chelsea last season. It was one of his best actual seasons, and doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime yet. He's really fit. He keeps himself healthy. He's great behind the scenes as well. By all accounts, very similar to David Luiz. And I think it's for a free transfer. I know he's got a bit there. I know it's a Kia signing. I know he got 3 years, and everyone thought he probably should have got 2 years. But I think even if he does well for 18 months, that 3-month deal, it's going to work out to be a decent sign. He's not on that much money. Some of the stuff that was written about what he was earning is just rubbish. And yes, he could end up getting more money if Arsenal go and win the Champions League in 3 years, or beat Real Madrid 7-0 or something. But let's face it, it's not going to happen. So I think he's on a decent wage and it's a really good signing. In terms of where he's going to play, I don't know. I haven't heard. I'm as intrigued as everyone where Arteta sees him, because obviously, like I said, his best position at Chelsea was on the right side, but he can play on the left, can play central. You kind of feel like Arsenal. You've got to stick with Pepe on the right for now. You've invested so heavily in Pepe.
Mm-hmm.
He was decent in the second half of the season. I still think it was a pretty positive first season. If you take
so then Sarlaka end up having the impact of Willian then.
Sorry,
on that then either Saka or Lacazette's going to end up feeling the brunt of the Willian conflict.
Potentially, but I think for Saka, you've got to remember Saka's age as well. I know he's a fantastic player, but you can't be playing week in, week out. And the football, you look at the schedule between now and Christmas, now and January, it is absolutely mental. And there is going to be rotation non-stop. There has to be. The players are going to get run into the ground. There's going to be injuries all over the place. So everyone is going to play an awful lot of football this season. It's just going to have to happen. And Willian's going to be key to that. I don't think he's going to start every game. It gives you options to play wherever you want him to play, and under Arteta, Arsenal pretty fluid anyway. So I was intrigued as anyone to see if he's going to be a starter, or if he's going to be more of a bench impact player. I doubt it. I can't imagine they'd have convinced him over from Chelsea to sit on the bench, but it'll be interesting to see where he lines up.
Couple quick hits on Smith Rowe. I love how David Ziegler uses he says he's at a critical point in his development. Either he gets. This is for Smith Rowe. Either he gets playing time or he turns into J. Emmanuel Thomas. Like, all people with hyphenated names are just alike.
Yeah.
Imagine he just. It's just deplorable, David.
It's 2020, David.
You're back to being a David.
Yeah. Gunnar Russ is saying he sent a super chat and it fucked off. Since I know you're listening via CFAX, Russ, that's bullshit.
We also have this comment from the lovely Archie, who would have jumped at the chance that we were apparently given to swap Emil Smith Rowe for Upamecano. Arsenal. We're going to rue the day that happened. I'll tell you that.
Rydog is saying Arsenal didn't lose a game in the league. Why are you taking off my comments, man? God damn it. Amateur hour. He's saying we didn't lose a game in the league in 2020 where Ozil featured. I don't know if that's right or wrong.
I think it's right because I don't know that he featured.
Because he didn't play. Yeah, Gakko54, that will continue to the end of 2020 because he's not going to play. Aston's asking, is that Charles Watts? You know what, man? Not all white people look the same, okay? But yes, it is.
Believe me, Aston is. We love Aston, and he gets that.
Oh no, there we go. Will selling Guendouzi come back and bite us, or is it the right way forward? Again, Russ, thank you so much for the donation. It will go to the Gooners versus Cancer charity. What do you think here, Charles? And then Mike, jump in after him.
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see if it bites him. But I think they're in a situation where they've got to sell him now, because if they don't sell him, what's going to happen? He's going to next year will be down to his final year of his contract, and you're going to get sort of value for him. So I think whether it comes back to bite him or not, we'll have to wait and see. But I don't think Arsenal got a choice really. I mean, it depends on Matteo as well. If Matteo and what happened with him, where did he come from? What was it? What team did he come over from France from?
Oh, wasn't it like Lorient or something?
Yeah, it was the same. It was the same one we got Koscielny from, I think.
It was Lorient, and he fell out with a coach there as well, and he sort of stuck it out in the reserves for a good sort of 6 months, I think, over there as well. So he's got form when it comes to sort of sitting back and not accepting and not being forced out of the club. But I just think that it's burned too many bridges. I think that relationship is totally gone now. I can't see a way back from it. So it's just best for him at his age. He needs to go and play football. Arsenal need the money. So whether it comes back to bite him or not, I don't know. It's one for the future, but they've got to get rid of him this summer. It's got to happen.
This was a.
Hold on, let me add something quick to that point for Guendouzi, Mike.
Yeah.
For me, I don't know that it will come back to bite us because I don't think he'll change. He's always going to want to be that big baller in the locker room. And if he's doing it now at 19, 20, 21, look at him compared to what Marcus Rashford is doing around the same age right now in England. And
maybe if he becomes the new kid on the block at a new team, rather than being like the youngest old player that we have, maybe he get his head straight. But
he just, he had the opportunity to go to a big club and he fucked it. And what I think is really interesting with Arteta's most recent comments is that everyone starts back at zero, right? He said that going into the Community Shield, yet Ozil and Guendouzi weren't in that match day squad. Now, I don't know if it was because of we saw a lot of players miss out because when they came back into the country, they had to go into quarantine. I don't know, but it's just interesting that those are the two players that we're desperate to see leave the club. And yet if everyone's starting at zero, we're not seeing him in the match day squad. I don't see that there is a bounce back for him.
He's not going to come back into the reckoning. I think it's gone. Like I said, he's burned his bridges with that now. He's the kind of figure as well. He's not going to back down, and it just best for everyone if they can find a buyer who can take him. And he's a good player. Look, he's fantastic. I thought it was really, really impressive when he came in. I remember I was over in Singapore when he made his debut against Atletico, and I was just like, who is this kid? We thought he was going to probably be down to 23s, and he's in here bossing the midfield against Atletico Madrid in his debut and ordering people around. And he's just, he was infectious. And it's just a shame how things have come out. But like you said, I think that the attitude that he's got and the way he approaches things and the way he deals with seniority and being told what to do is going to hamper him throughout his career. I think you look at Rabiot. I know, I'm not just saying it because they're both French, but I just think you kind of track their careers. I wouldn't be surprised if Guendouzi goes around from big club to big club to big club because someone's going to think they can change him, but I'm just not sure they're going to be able to.
Yeah, and as Ponyboy wrote, Guendouzi is Rabiot 2.0. He'll look back and regret the actions when he's too old to do anything about it.
Is that Ponyboy from The Outsiders? Are you old enough to remember that? You're not old enough to remember that movie. I barely am, but we have an excellent question from Owen, and I want to get to that after we talk about Gooners versus Cancer, and we'll make that our final question to Charles before we say goodbye.
Yep.
And I've got this queued up. So speaking of Gooners versus Cancer, and speaking of eschewing the ability to buy some very valuable merch on another website, and instead donating it to Gooners versus Cancer, I think you've made the right choice, Stephen. But Gooners versus Cancer is right in the middle of its 2020 campaign. As some of you know, as many of you are just finding out, we run a charity called Gooners versus Cancer that raises money for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, raises money directly for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. And we've been doing it this is the fourth year, but the second year we've really taken it, broadly to the whole world. It is based on my personal history of my father passing away 10 years ago of leukemia. We know that everybody, Andy, Charles, you probably have someone that in your family that's suffered from cancer. It's just a dreadful thing to have to go through as a family member, or certainly as, suffering from it yourself. And so we want to be able to use whatever reach we have, as small as it is, as whether it's growing, whether it's not, to do good things. And so Gooners versus Cancer was started. This is kind of the web page when you go to Gooners vs Cancer or Gooners v Cancer. Either one, however you spell versus, will take you to the right site. We're now at $3,200 out of our goal of $16,000, but we're just getting started. This may have been the decision to donate rather than buy that other merch that we were talking about. Thank you so much for doing that. Right now, we got a couple things going on. The first is a FIFA. What have I done here? Hold on. I don't think I'm trying to share that screen. First thing that we've done is we're running a FIFA 20 tournament for those gamers out there. We're running two of them. They're already going on, so it's unfortunately too late to join. But we've got a PS4 version and Xbox version. They're Champions League formats, and as of today, we're just finished up the group stages. And we're having a live, I don't know if you know this, Andy, but we're having a live group elimination phase draw on this channel later tonight, one for the Xbox and one for the PS4. So if you're in the tournament, or if you're just a fan of seeing other people play FIFA, follow the Gooners pod and follow Gooners V Cancer on Twitter, and you can get more information about that. Coming up very soon is what I'm really, really excited about, which is our Gooner raffle for 2020. We have some amazing, amazing things to put on raffle for you to bid on. When you donate to Gooners versus Cancer, you're not just giving money to charity. You're not just getting a tax deduction for those of you who that applies to, but you're also putting yourself in the running to win things like a first team signed shirt, a home shirt from Arsenal. We've got experiences like Perry Groves has told us that he'll treat a group of 4 to an Emirates tour that he does as a Legends, and then take you out for beers afterwards. Which the second part of that is obviously something that not everybody has their access to. You can buy a Legends tour, but you can't buy pints with one. Anywhere, or you can't get that anywhere. So we're going to have regular team shirts donated by our supporters. Mike Hernandez, thank you for that. We have a handful of these amazing 89 shirts from Stephen Feely at feestees.me. I love this shirt because I lived it, and it's got the famous call from Brian Moore in the form of an 89, and we've got a number of different sizes of that. We're going to get retro jerseys signed by Alan Smith, by Kevin Campbell, by Lee Dixon. I mean, just the cooperation from the club and from its Legends has been massive, and we're going to use that to raise as much money as we possibly can and try to hit our goals and hit the 16,000 at least that we raised last year. So the website's on the scroll at the bottom of the screen. If you're just listening, it's goonersvscancer.com. You can also go to goonersvcancer.com and make a tax-deductible donation, and there'll be more details about the raffle and the things that are up for bid within the next few days. So stay tuned to that. Now back to Ian's question, if I can find it. Ian is, although we make fun of his name, he's a dear friend, and I should point out he has had the initiative, without being asked, to set up a charity football tournament that takes place 2 weeks from tonight in Newry, Ireland, where he lives, where he has assembled a group of people who are all donating to the tune of, I think he said, about £1,000 or about $1,300, which it's just amazing. He did it without being asked. He put it all together, just those sort of things from our friends, from our contacts, is just it's heartwarming to know that there's that kind of generosity, and it isn't always about paying money. It's about doing things that help bring notoriety and awareness to it. But Owen is also a very, very good young ish writer. Writes a lot on the Gooner Talk website. He previously wrote for another site, but obviously looking for some professional advice and stewardship, and the subtext to this is, I think he wants you to fly out to Ireland and personally mentor him, which by the way is on the Gooners versus Cancer thing. We figured that we'd just break the news to you now, but
chuck that one in the raffle.
Yeah, we're just going to do that because what are you going to say? No. Do you have any advice for someone still wet behind the ears as a football writer?
It sounds really cliche, but it is just work hard. It's where I am now. It's been a 20-year journey for me, really, sort of starting basically 2000. Actually, no, it's 2001, so 19 years as a junior news reporter, earning absolutely like minimum wage, basically, and not even that, and just spending countless hours in parish council meetings, planning council meetings, doing stuff I didn't like at all, but all with the aim of eventually getting into sport and moving into football. And there's times I'd bang my head against a brick wall just thinking, what am I doing? This isn't for me. I'm not getting any money out of it. I'm not enjoying it. But I stuck with it, and eventually you get your breakthrough. And like I said, it especially in journalism and writing, there's so many people who want to do it when it comes, especially in football as well. It can, everyone's a writer, everyone does it. Like I said, there's blogs, there's everyone can just start their own website and do it. And there's so much competition out there that you can feel like if you want to really make a career out of it, it can feel impossible at times, but it's not. You can keep working. You can get your foot in the door. And then when you get,
as we've demonstrated, the barriers to entry have never been lower, but the barriers to quality have never been higher. And so it's nice to be. We're still waiting for that, but you've clearly hit that, and I think you're a great person for Ian to. I think it shows a lot for him to even ask that rather than think he's got everything figured out like so many people we see do that these days. Anything else? I tend to cut people off while they're in the middle of talking, and it's very rude. But
no, I just keep going. Like it's the one thing that if I hadn't kept going, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. And when I finished school, I didn't go to university at all, and a lot of people will think, think that that's a must and you must do it, but I didn't want to do that. I went off traveling. I finished school, went off traveling for a year around Australia, lived in Australia, came to the US, and then came back and thought, what am I going to do? And it was always I wanted to get paid to watch Arsenal, and I knew once I realised I wasn't good enough to play for Arsenal, I was the next best thing, get paid to watch them, and it's taken a hell of a long time to get there. And like I said, I've done a lot of stuff that I haven't enjoyed doing to get there, but eventually I haven't. It's I could have easily given up, but I didn't, and I think that's it. Just keep going. If you've got a dream, if you want to do something, just keep working. It sounds cliche, but it is just the case. Keep working, keep pushing, and you can get there. So that would be a main advice that I could give, and just listen to a lot of people as well. And along the way, you'll meet a lot of good people along the way, and take little bit of snippets of advice from everyone you hear, and absorb it all in, and you will one day you'll get there.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. Another way you can get there is to hit the thumbs up button on our YouTube broadcast. I'm showing about 275 people watching right now, which to say it lightly is by far our heaviest watched podcast. That says a lot about the quality of our guests and the information that you're bringing to the table. Word of mouth. There might be another reason for a few people that are watching for the first time, but we'll take it. And yes, by the way, that was our good friend Steve-O put his money where his mouth was, avoided that merch that he was going to get from that other website, and donated it towards Gooners versus Cancer. So we really we thank you for that, and would invite anybody else. And if you donate now when we don't have the auction up yet, you will get credit and basically entries into the auction anyway. So don't feel that you have to wait. You'll definitely get the credit for that. And speaking of not listening to what we said and donating very generous amounts of money to YouTube, David Ziegler, ever get starstruck in the course of covering a story, or is this your first time?
That's a question. Have I ever got starstruck? Not so much. I tell you what, this is totally not what an answer that David.
We have to point out it was 1886 that was donated as well. That's no coincidence.
And hook me up with that, because I didn't. Yeah, it's a fantastic cause, by the way, Gooners for Cancer. Listen to that, and I'll make a donation after this, because it's I lost my mum to cancer about 5 years ago, just before Arsenal beat Hull City to win the FA Cup. It was her funeral was 3 days before that final, and me and my dad were at Wembley that day, and it was Aaron Ramsey's goal will always mean more to me than pretty much any other Arsenal goal, maybe aside from Michael Thomas, and because of what had happened that week. And so it's a fantastic cause, and I'll certainly make a donation after this. But in terms of that question, ever get starstruck? And of course, I don't tend to get starstruck when I talk to footballers. But one story that I'll have, when I was on work experience back in 2002, it was the week of Arsenal versus Chelsea in the FA Cup final at Cardiff, and I went to London Colney for the press conference. I was working at an agency, doing work experience in an agency called Teamwork in London, and I went, I needed a piss, and I went into the toilet at Colney, and it's completely different to what it's like nowadays when you're not around the players. And I walked in there, and on my left of the urinals was Sol Campbell, and on the right was Lee Dixon, and I had to go into the middle. And so I wouldn't say I was starstruck covering them, but I have to admit I totally with trying to go to the toilet in between those two was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever experienced around any
What's the obvious question we have to ask, Andy?
Did you say anything to them?
No, that's not what I was thinking.
I'm not going there.
I didn't even talk. I just pretended to go to the toilet, but I couldn't in the slightest bit go to the toilet and just ran out.
Yeah, my moment was during the half of the Arsenal-Liverpool game, the draw at home last season, the 1-1, where I was pissing in a urinal next to Alan Davies, the great Alan Davies of the Gooners podcast. And yes, I did have a look. Charles, we're not going to ask you about
I absolutely wasn't going to dare having a look at those two.
We've had Lee Dixon on the podcast, and he refused to answer the question that you could probably have answered had you just done your due diligence.
I was in full stage fright mode, and all I was thinking about was getting out of that toilet.
So Charles Watts gets stage struck in the toilet, but not generally in the media room. That's where that happened.
I'm trying to think. I think if I ever, I was talking to my mate about this the other day, because he interviewed Triple H the other day over here, and if the article about using his theme music. That's fantastic. And I said to him, I was like, if I sat down and if I had Triple H, Austin, Jericho in front of me, I'd be absolute in pieces. But
this is killing Andy because
nerds.
I watch it with my son. I have a track record of going to live events back when those existed, sitting in like the front row of the entrance ramp in an Arsenal kit with a sign with the Arsenal crest, and just basically clowning for 2.5 hours during Raw and during pay-per-views. And watching on Twitter as people just go absolutely nuts, like, who's wearing the Arsenal kit in the front row? It's great, and I think I've made a new best friend, and Andy will never talk to you again now.
I was at WrestleMania. I flew over to WrestleMania in Houston for it was I can't remember which WrestleMania it was, 25, 26, when it was Taker versus Michaels for the when Michaels retired, and I was sitting there in my Arsenal shirt about
that was a great match. I have to go back and watch that. This is killing Andy, but no, it's good, and it just there is no debate. Speaking of starstruck, there is no debate. The greatest of all time, Chris Jericho. Just no one ever better on the mic. No one ever better. I mean, wouldn't you say? And Andy, who gets called Dusty all the time because his last name is Rhodes.
It's surprising to me that I now know that you both have 2 kids. That there are women out there who look to procreate with grown-ass men watching WWF or whatever the fuck it's called. Nerds. All right. We've got a lot of new people here, Mike, and I think there's a reason why they're here, not only for Charles, but because of your banter on Twitter. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's listened. I don't know if you want to address the small gerbil in the room, Mike, or if you just want to leave it be.
Nah, let's just let it hit like with a thud. And to anyone that I speak to him regularly. And anyone who thought that he had a high opinion of himself, you fell for the joke. Let's just put it that way. In any case, thank you to everybody. I almost feel like dragging this out for another 1 or 2 minutes because we're about to hit 400. And while that may not be a lot for some, certainly is for us. So thank you for joining us. We plan on podcasting every maybe twice a week. Maybe we're going to do 3 out of every 3 shows every 2 weeks or so. But during the Gooners versus Cancer, we're going all out to get some of the best guests that we can. We've accomplished that with Charles. We had Gab Marcotti on as well prior to that, who, as many of you now know, is a 30-year-old high school buddy of mine who I played football with, and he couldn't be more more of a great guy to talk to, unless his name was Charles Watts. He actually is. We have some exciting people that he may be introducing us to pretty soon to have on the pod. We're going to be talking to some people that we've spoken to before, Amy Lawrence among them, Lee Dixon, Alan Smith. I mean, they're all on the list that we're trying to get lined up for the rest of September. So please tune in. There should be some interesting shows. And thank you for your generosity to Gooners versus Cancer. Charles, you have your own YouTube page, which you've referenced a couple times. I've seen you put out great content. Mm-hmm. Again, keeping the line of communication open with your with your listeners and
Yes.
and viewers, and we want to make sure that people know how to find that, how to find you on Twitter, and anything else you'd like to plug, including hitting the like button on our podcast. But tell us where we can find you and what you're up to.
Well, Twitter at Charles_Watts, YouTube. To be honest, I have no idea. Just type in Charles Watts Arsenal. I think you should find it. It's it's still in the early days of that. It's going pretty well, and I'm enjoying it. And people seem to be liking it. So I used to get so many questions asking me to do it, and people saying you should start one up. And so I eventually caved, and it's going pretty well. It's just about finding the time to fit it all in. So yeah, please do head over to that. I'm on Facebook as well. Again, search for Charles Watts Arsenal, and I'll pop up.
Charles, I have a quick question for you. Yesterday we did play QPR, and it was very secretive. And I'm genuinely wondering, was it as secretive because we were giving Lionel Messi a trial to see if he was good enough to be an Arsenal player?
No, it was secretive because it's Arsenal, and that's what Arsenal do. It was it was 4-3. Arsenal won 4-3. I still don't know the goal scorers. I was trying to find out, but it's literally on lockdown from Arsenal.
Messi also.
I was talking to someone at Arsenal about it, and they were like, "No, us and QPR have both promised that we're not going to put anything out at all about it." And then about 5 minutes later, QPR whacked up a match report on their website.
I believe it was 4 goals from Socrates.
Yeah, probably that.
And after each one, he did the little baby thing for his new kid. So
even on the QPR match report, they had the QPR goal scorers and everything, but they didn't mention anything about Arsenal. So they're obviously on strict orders. Don't say anything about it. But Arsenal are like that. Everyone else is inviting journalists in to watch their pre-season friendlies, but Arsenal is it's typical Arsenal. It's all behind closed doors. No one's allowed to know.
Irish Texas, we're not authorized to make that announcement on the podcast.
No, we're not. But if you go back and listen, about 20 minutes ago, we did talk about that. A lot of questions are coming in that we've covered, so you have to go back and listen. Aubameyang, Partey, Areola, Ceballos, everyone. We've covered it all. And yeah, as Gil just said, and I said, Messi scored all 7 goals.
Big up, Gil.
Yeah,
I love me some Gil.
Yeah. So again, Charles, thank you so much for joining us, guys. Goonersversuscancer.com. Go visit it. It is a genuine and real thing that we've been doing for years now, and we're looking to top our top dollars from last year. And again, because many people have in one way or another implied that it might not be a legitimate charity, you are donating directly. Not to Gooners versus Cancer, but directly to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. I'm riding my bike 120 miles in 2 weeks for this goddamn thing, and we're not even trying to get donations for it. So it's real. We will. Yeah. So thank you for all the support, Charles. Been a pleasure. Hope to have you back again. Maybe the next transfer window, if not sooner. But you've been brilliant. Thank you so much for spending an hour and a half with us today.
No worries. Thanks for having me. It's been lots of fun.
And come on, you Gooners.